Hey, thanks for stopping by. My name is Trevor Brisbane. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm the transformational minister at Humber Valley United Church, and it's really great that you clicked on this video. This is supposed to be a live stream of our service, but the live stream didn't work this past Sunday. And so I wanted to come on here and just redo the talk just to make sure our community could all be caught up and we're all on the same page because I think this matters. So I started by asking everyone to picture in their mind a time when you went on a really great trip. Maybe it was just this past summer, or maybe it was when you were a kid decades ago. But picture a really great trip if you can right now. Could have been camping where you jump in the car and you drive for a couple hours, you set up a tent and then spend the weekend connecting with nature. Or maybe you're thinking of a trip that was far more exotic where you go somewhere, different culture, different experience, just some completely different far away. Do you have something in your mind? What do you remember about that trip? Like what sticks out in your memory? I don't know what you're thinking right now, but I would be willing to bet you're thinking about like experiences and people and places and sights and sounds and smells. And I'm almost certain that you're not thinking about all the work and all the errands that went into making that trip happen, like the packing and the preparing, right? Because there is so much to do whenever you travel. You need to book your trip. You gotta book the hotels or the Airbnb or the campsites. You gotta get your rental car. You gotta get your airport transfers. If you're flying internationally, you need to make sure you got your passport up to date, your travel medical insurance. Maybe you need to get to some vaccines depending where in the world you're going. Make sure that someone is there to check in on your place when you're gone, right? In the summer, cut the grass. In the winter, shovel the driveway, check the mail, maybe feed the cat. Then there's packing for the trip. If you're anything like me, packing's a thing. If I'm going anywhere for like a week or less, I'm gonna carry on luggage. So I think through what am I gonna wear every moment of every day. Like what's the weather gonna be like? I can pack everything for a week, with including workout gear and a sport coat and carry it on. So it takes a lot of planning. Then you gotta clean out the fridge because you don't want to come home to a science experiment in there. You gotta pack the car, take the garbage out. You gotta find luggage locks, put all your toiletries in those little clear Ziploc bags. I mean, I'm tired just thinking about it. Like travel takes a lot. And for most of us, when we do it, we get excited. We want to do it. We don't think about how much work it takes to get there because it's all about the destination. It's about the adventure of the travel. We pay a lot of money to travel. Why? Because we all know that those countless things, those tedious errands that we have to do to get ready for any trip aren't really what it's about. We know we do those things because they lead us somewhere we want to go. Those are the things that help us get somewhere better. I think church can be a lot like that. Like the way church has sort of evolved in North America over the last number of centuries, it just requires a lot of work to keep it going, doesn't it? We have we have services and fundraisers. We got to find volunteers, and there's committees and task teams and budgets and reports. And of course, there's fun and silly times together, but there's also like stressful interpersonal dynamics that come into play. Could could you imagine waking up every day packing a suitcase? Not because you were like going to go somewhere, but just because you thought you had to pack a suitcase. It was what you had to do every single day. Packing packing only makes sense. Packing's only worthwhile when you know it's going to take you somewhere. And so in the same way, all the stuff we do as a church, where's it leading us? Where's it taking us? Are we sure we're even packing the right things for where we're trying to get to? So last October, the board and the staff team here at Humber Valley, we begin a process of asking these kind of big questions. It's been a process of listening for Spirit. Where are we heading? Who is God calling us to become? Which direction are we working toward? What does it mean to be a church in this complex post-pandemic moment of human history? And out of that listening, out of that process of discernment, has emerged what we're calling the North Star, or our North Star. Now, I know a lot of people are familiar with, organizations have what's called like a mission or vision statement, which I get that. But when you think about it, if you've got a mission statement, like a mission implies that completion is possible. Or that one day you'll be able to step back and say, mission complete, check that box. And I'm not actually sure that a church can ever complete our call to embody God's presence in the world. It's more a vocation we live than a mission we complete. So rather than focusing on mission statement language, we wanted the North Star to be a directional commitment, an expression of what we're looking toward, what we're compelled by, the direction we are heading as a community committed to living the gospel right here where we are, in this place, in this time. And throughout human history, explorers and sojourners and sailors have used the North Star to find their bearings, to chart their course, to lead them in the direction that they needed to go. The North Star. So what compels us? What direction will we orient ourselves toward? What's the guide that will lead us into our future? What's our North Star? In the same way, Jesus embodies the divine dream for the world. Together, Humber Valley United Church is seeking to be a living expression of justice, compassion, and belonging, now and into our future. In the same way, Jesus embodies the divine dream for the world. Together, Humber Valley United Church is seeking to be a living expression of justice and compassion and belonging, now and into the future. That's it. Pretty straightforward, right? That's our North Star. And maybe you're thinking, Trev, really that took like 11 months of listening and discernment to get there? I mean, it's not rocket surgery. I think I'd say, yeah, it did take a lot of time, a lot of work, a lot of listening. Because when you're listening for Spirit to speak, you want to make sure you're hearing right. That first line, in the same way Jesus embodies the divine dream for the world. That's a theological statement, isn't it? It's essentially saying that Humber Valley is all in when it comes to following Jesus. Which I think on so many levels should just be kind of like a obvious no-brainer, right? To be a Christian community, of course, it means you organize ourselves around the Christ. We find our identity in the person of Jesus, the Christ. I mean, Christian means little Christ. The vision statement of our denomination, of the United Church of Canada, is called by God as disciples of Jesus. Called by God as disciples of Jesus. That word disciples can mean like student or followers, or I think what I like best is apprentices. Called by God as apprentices of Jesus or disciples of Jesus. The United Church of Canada seeks to be a bold, connected, evolving church of diverse, courageous, hope-filled communities, united in deep spirituality, inspiring worship, and daring justice. That's beautiful, isn't it? Everything the United Church wants to be comes out of the divine calling to exude the way the character, the ethos of Jesus. Who we are to be and how we are to be in the world all comes out of, stems from Jesus. For the United Church and for us in our little expression of it here at Humber Valley United, Jesus is the instigator, the initiator, the exemplifier of who we are and who we need to become. It all originates in Jesus. So this isn't a talk about organizational statements. I want to talk about what it means to be a people who are all in, who exist to exude God's dream for the world, as embodied in the life and the death and the resurrection of Jesus. Hebrews chapter 1, verse 3. The Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of God's being. John chapter 10, the Gospel of John chapter 10, verse 30, Jesus says, I and the Father are one. John chapter 1, verse 18, Jesus speaking, he says, no one has ever seen God, but the one and only Son, who is himself God and is in closest relationship with the Father, has made God known. Colossians 2:9, for in Christ all the fullness of the deity lives in human or in bodily form. See, what the Christian tradition is emphatic about is that if you want to know who God is, if you want to know what God longs for in this world, if you want to know what God cares about and is like, Jesus is where we begin to look. That's the Christian way. We begin to look at Jesus. What's the scariest thing you've ever done? For me, I think there's an argument that last Tuesday may have been that scary moment for me. And I say that not lightly because for my 30th birthday, this was a while ago, but my wife sent me skydiving. She didn't take me skydiving, she sent me skydiving. In college, I bungee jumped not once, but twice, and it was scary. But I think last Tuesday for me was even more terrifying. So for a number of years, I've been the manager of my son's hockey team. And when you manage a hockey team, basically what you're doing is you're responsible for every logistic and every detail that the team requires off the ice. So it's like from ordering jerseys to registering for tournaments to dealing with suspensions and paperwork and finance. The finances, there's a lot. It's managing everything that's not related to the actual being on ice. That's the coach's domain. Well, this year I'm still managing the team, but because of circumstances, I've also taken on a role as one of the coaches, which means now I am on ice, which means I'm running drills, which means I'm setting power plays and penalty kills, which means I'm drawing X's and O's on whiteboards, which means I got to give Ted Lasso talks to 15-year-old boys who are actually really good at hockey. Friends, I've never played a game of hockey in my life. I've never played organized hockey. If you were to see me skate, you would be like, oh yeah, no, that guy, he's never played hockey. So this summer, in anticipation of stepping into this role, I've just been reading books on hockey. I've been watching YouTube videos on hockey. I've done a deep dive into hockey TikTok, which I didn't even know was a thing. But I'm here to tell you, you can read about hockey, you can study hockey, you can immerse yourselves in hockey playbooks. But this past Tuesday night, when I stepped onto the ice for the very first time with an under 16 A team, these kids, They're massive and they're flying by me at like Mach 3 and they're ringing slap shots off the end boards. And I'm going to be honest with you, very quickly, that hits differently. The game hits differently than just reading a coaching manual. It puts a little bit more at stake than a jersey order. Instantly, the intensity and energy and physicality of the game is felt in your very bones. The bones I was trying so hard not to break. Well, in the same way, Jesus brings an intensity and energy and physicality to the spiritual life that very quickly hits differently. It's one thing to talk about God. It's one thing to read about God. Of course, we all have our ideas about God. We can talk theology. We can all discuss our theories about God. We can all articulate our experience of God. Most people are happy to tell you what they like or they don't like about church and what kind of spirituality really resonates for them. But to step into a life where we commit to being a people who make it their mandate and identity to live every day in the direction where you're making every decision, spending every dollar, infusing every conversation in the way, in the heart of Jesus. That hits differently. That John 1:18 passage is telling us that there is no one who has seen God, but then Jesus comes along and Jesus reveals God to us, reveals what God is like and what God cares about. Instantly, our life in God and our spirituality isn't some abstract, conceptualized thing that just exists sort of out there in concepts. But all of a sudden, Jesus makes this spiritual life, this very tangible, physical reality as we become apprentices of the Jesus way. See, Jesus' whole life is lived to translate God into the physical, material world we live in. And if we're paying attention, what Jesus invites us into is a bit like stepping onto the ice for the very first time with a bunch of testosterone-filled 15-year-olds. It's inherently risky. It's actually kind of dangerous. It might even be a little bit reckless. Because to say that we're disciples, to say that we're apprentices of Jesus, means we're seeking to embody God's dream for the world in the same way that Jesus did. Our North Star is saying that we will live out the same values that Jesus lived out. Jesus, the guy who says things like, take up your cross and follow me. You have to lose your life to find it. Sell everything you have and give it to the poor. Love your enemies, turn the other cheek. Don't forgive 7 times, but 77 times. This is the guy who's born homeless, who lived impoverished, who fed the hungry, who infuriated the powerful, who was so committed to justice and compassion that both the state and his very own religion conspire to have him killed. This is the best picture we have of who God is. The self-emptying, relentlessly loving, justice-seeking, empire-subverting, cross-carrying God. And if you see Jesus for who he is, you got to admit that it can be a scary, intimidating picture of spirituality. It gets very real and very tangible very fast. You almost get why people would rather talk about God in the abstract as a concept rather than God as revealed in the person and the life of Jesus. Anti-empire, anti-greed, anti-violence. Always for the marginalized, always for the poor, always turning the establishment upside down. That's whose life we're seeking to embody. because that's exactly who God is. So our North Star is not an organizational statement, at least not one that any consultant or church growth expert would say, hey, you should do this. Because it's scary. In the same way, Jesus embodies the divine dream for the world. Together, Humber Valley United Church is seeking to be a living expression of justice, compassion, and belonging now and into the future. So when I got home Tuesday night after that very first hockey practice, my wife Marisol and I went for a walk through the neighborhood with our dog, as we often do in the evening, and we debriefed the day. I asked about her day. It was the first day of school, so I asked her how the year started off. And then she asked me about my first practice, being on the ice as a hockey coach. I told her how terrified I was. And I told her I realized that I didn't just have imposter syndrome, but out there on the ice now I'm legitimately an imposter. And she smiled. She told me that even though it's really scary for me and really embarrassing for her that other parents are going to see me skate, it's the right thing to do for our son. So that was Tuesday night. Thursday night, we had our very first exhibition game as a team. The George Bell Titans versus the West Mall Lightning. We won 8-5. The kids were rusty, but man, they played hard. I loved it. You ever notice how the scariest, the hardest things in life often turn out to be some of the most rewarding things in life? Not because you always win, because you don't. But because when you do the scary stuff that really matters, I think in a way you come closer to a better version of yourself. The direction the leadership of our church is inviting us into isn't going to be easy. It has to change many of the conversations that just seem to keep swirling around here at Humber Valley. It's a direction that's going to ask all of us to look in a common direction, a common way, a common purpose. If we're doing right, it's fair to say it's going to be risky. It's not going to be safe. It will definitely come at a cost. It will require sacrifice, and it will require all of us to constantly be asking, is this more about what I want or more about what really matters relative to the life of Jesus? And that's scary. That's dying to self. It's almost like a kind of crucifixion. It ain't easy. But maybe with the right amount of faith and a certain degree of abandonment, maybe our North Star can lead us closer to the best versions of ourselves now and into the future. And that's a trip I'd be willing to pack for. Maybe you'll come along too.